Hey there. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am so excited for today's live. I am also recording this for the podcast. So if you hear me saying an intro and stuff like that, and an outro in the end, that's just for recording purposes. I'd love to know who's here watching. I'm going to wait for you guys to pop on for a little bit. I know it takes a little bit of time. I also sent out a messenger reminder for some of you. So please say hi. I'd love to know who's here. I don't know who's here until you put in a comment below. So let me know. And if you're watching the replay, put replay on the bottom. So welcome to the Spark Show. In this episode, I'll be covering how to find your focus as an influencer, what you should be focused on depending on what stage you're on, and my top tips to keep your focus when you get distracted. Now, if this is the first time you've interacted with me, listened to my podcast, or watched a Facebook Live, my name is Gwen Lane. I love helping influencers increase their income, impact, and influence. So thank you so much for being with me here today. I'm going to look at the chat box really quick and see who's here. We have Charisse is here, Heather is here, Anne Marie. How are you guys? Thank you so much for joining me live. I love it when people join me live for these. It gives me so much energy. I like to interact with people. So I'll be asking you questions. Let me know if that relates to you, and be interactive because you're here anyway, right? And so first thing I want to talk about today is how to find your focus as an influencer. So if you're like me, you have 1,000 things to do. You might also be balancing and managing your time between your 9-to-5 job, your family, your life, your friends, your relationships, and then you're trying to build a business on the side. So let me know if you can relate in the chat box, if this is something that you've been doing as like kind of having difficulty and struggling to find your focus. And so I'm going to give you my my top tips on that. So the first one is to know your priorities. So a lot of the times we have all of this stuff to do, things to do, jumbled up list in our head, and it's just in our head. We don't really know how many things there are and what you should do first, right? And so what I like to do is what I call a brain dump, and I just dump all the things that's in my head, everything on things I have to do at home, things I have to do, things that people I'm supposed to follow up with, things I'm supposed to do today, what kind of content I need to create. So I dump all of it onto a pad. I don't have the pad with me here, but I have a brain dump pad. I got it from this company called Knock Knock that I really love. I love their journals. Their pads and everything. They have tons of really cool things to keep you organized and focused. And so I have a brain dump pad and I dump everything on there, and then I organize it in my thoughts. And I found that when I do a brain dump, it actually relieves my anxiety and stress because now I know everything that's on my head is on paper and I could see it and organize it. And most of the time, probably 99% of the time, I end up thinking that there's actually more to do, but actually there's not. And when you see it on paper, it relieves the stress of like this. You say you have 1,000 things, but it's really 13. And I'm an overreactor. You might be too. And I'm like, oh, I have a million things to do. I have 1,000 things to do. But really it's 13. And if I get like 5 done a day, I'll be done in 3 days, right? And so really the brain dump is a tool that you should use. And I know like some people think, oh, that's so basic, but how many of you have actually done a brain dump where you've put everything in your head on paper? Not a lot of people do it. They say, they do to-do lists, but I feel like it's more of a everything that you're thinking of in your mind right now. And so when you have this list, you can figure out what is the priority for today, what needs to get done first. So when you know what's important, you're going to prioritize what you need to do first. And this comes with planning and preparation. So one thing I like to do is to break down my goals. And I do this per year, and then I do it by quarter, by month, by week. And I do this so that I know exactly what I need to do that day. And sometimes, like I was on vacation and I was traveling, and sometimes you kind of fall behind. You kind of need to regroup when you get back. That's totally fine. And that's when you need to do another brain dump and then reprioritize and kind of figure that out and plan it. If you know what the priority is for that day, then you can plan your day and you're not spending your time figuring out what you're supposed to be doing. Instead, you can go ahead and get started. So the next thing that I want to offer to you as a way to focus is to focus on one thing at a time. So a lot of us grew up or heard that multitasking is a good thing. And the truth is, multitasking is not a good thing. Focusing on one thing at a time is the best thing that you can do for you, for your business, for your life. It's about being 100% present to what you're doing at that time. So multitasking actually takes away the focus from the one thing that you're supposed to be doing. So just let me know in the comments who's heard before that you're supposed to be multitasking, or it's great. You used to think that like, oh, I'm a great multitasker because I could do so many things at a time. So let me just explore this concept with you for a little bit. The thing is, we have a limited energy and resources, right? And so the more you split up that energy and resources, the less growth and progress you'll see happening when you're doing multiple things. So an analogy I like to use is the bucket of water analogy. And so, for example, let's say that you have one bucket of water and that represents your energy, your time, and resources. Like you can't have more. You only have one bucket a day and that's it. So if you put that into one plant, then the plant will obviously grow faster because it's getting all of your water in your bucket, right? But if you're working on two plants, right, then that means that they'll only get half your bucket of water every day because that's all the water that you have. And so the plants will get less water and will take longer to grow. So it's fine to do multiple things, but you just have to be aware that, it's going to take longer. So some of you, you're balancing your full-time job and your influencer business, and that's okay. It might go a little slower than someone who is able to dive into it and focus only on that. And that's okay, but you have to think about all your projects. So some people here are trying to start an influencer business and then they're trying to do all the platforms, right? They're trying to do Facebook and Twitter and Pinterest and blog and everything. And again, you have one bucket of water, and if you're filling it a little bit. Now, there are strategies to help you like scheduling, batching, time blocking. I teach my students all of that, but there's still only one bucket of water at the end of the day. So I really want you to think about that in terms of your focus of only focusing on one thing at a time. You will get more done and you will make more progress rather than doing multiple things. And another thing that supports this concept is a concept called context switching. And so let me know if you've ever heard of the term context switching. And it's the thing that happens when you move from one task to another. So there's time in between activities and tasks that your brain and your body needs to switch to the next thing. So for example, let's say you're shooting photos somewhere and then you're going to sit down and write a blog post. So there's a context switch that happens in the middle of that, and it takes time for you to get in the zone or into the mode. Have you ever felt that way where, you were doing something else and then you're sitting down to write down your social post and then you're like drawing a blank, or you're starting to get distracted and then you're starting to scroll down on Instagram instead? That's because there's a context switch that happens. And this is why what I want you to do is to batch your tasks together so you're doing them all at once, because you'll feel it. Like if you do 4 blogs at the same time, you'll start getting into the zone and the mode rather than doing like a blog post and editing photos and doing multiple things. It's actually easier on your brain and actually takes up less energy if you were doing the same thing or same batch of things at the same time. So my action plan for you is to do a brain dump of all the things in your head, and then to prioritize that so you can know what your priorities are. And then the second thing is I want you to actually do a list or an inventory of all the tasks that you need to accomplish for your influencer business. So if that's creating content, you could break that down into filming, shooting, recording, editing, publishing, and I only want you to focus on that per chunk of time. And I don't want you to like switch between like responding to emails and messages and then editing and all the other stuff. I want you to batch together and plan your schedule with as little context switching as possible. So when I started to do that myself, when I started to be like, okay, Mondays are content days and that's where I do all my social media posts, or Sundays is when I actually like to plan. And then I only do podcast interviews on Thursdays. I actually started to see my focus started to be better. I was 100% present. I wasn't trying to think of, creating social media posts on podcast days. Like I would be very focused. I would get so much done. My productivity was so much better when I started doing that. And so that's why I wanted to share that with you so that you can start using these tools. And again, these are free tools. They're just changing behavior in the way you're doing things. So brain dumping is amazing, prioritizing, and then doing some sort of task inventory, so then you're avoiding the context switching in your schedule. So now let's talk about what you should be focused on. And for this, I want to talk about the 5 stages of influencer success. And so I have this for my students in our membership, and we talk about the 5 stages. And the first one is stage 1, build my brand. So if you're first starting out, this is what you should be focused on. So let me know in the comments if you're just starting out, if you are stage 1, build my brand. And this is about building a solid foundation for your brand by knowing exactly who your audience is, getting into your analytics, surveying your audience, and knowing who you are as a brand, having a mission in your brand identity. I know so many influencers that do not take the time to focus on this at all. They usually just start with focusing and growing their following without intention and strategy. And that's why they're now wondering after a little bit why things are not working, right? It's because they didn't take the time to do this. They haven't even looked at their analytics. They're not even surveying their audience. They don't even know what their brand mission is. And if you don't have these things in place, it's going to be a lot harder to monetize later on, which is not until stage 5. So stage 2 is map my strategy. This is once you've built that solid foundation for your brand. And remember, that's a never-ending thing. You're always going to be refining and looking at that. All of these things are happening all the time. You don't just like do your brand identity once and never look at it again. All these top corporations, they do brand, they look at their branding like every month, every year, every quarter. It's something that they keep improving on. And so I say once you've built a solid foundation, but like enough time to kind of figure it out, and then you're gonna go back to it later on. And so you'll want to map out your strategy, meaning you're going to focus on how to deliver value through your content. And so if you've already done the work on your audience branding content, which I'm calling the ABCs of influence, then you're going to go to stage 2, which is mapping your strategy. A lot of influencers are just posting to post with no strategy at all. They're just posting photos of themselves or posting photos of their food with no intention and really no reason, and providing no value to the audience except for here's what I ate for dinner, right? And so yeah, that's great, that's cool, but like, did you actually give them any value? And so let me know if you're in stage 2, where you need to be figuring out your strategy, but you've already figured out like who your audience is, and you've niched that down, and you know your brand identity. A lot of people Most people who come to me need to start at stage 1 regardless, because even though they've had like thousands of followers, maybe they already have 10,000 followers, some of them have hundreds and thousands of followers and they've never taken the time to build their brand or map their strategy. So it has to, you have to start at that foundation, and really you'll thank me later, because this is what the brands are going to be looking at, and it's also what they're going to ask you for. And so once you kind of know what your brand is and who you help, who you serve, and then what your strategy is, stage 3 is grow your influence. So as an influencer, we want to reach more people to help more people, right? But we can't lose focus on the people who are already following us now. Even if that's only 10 people, 100 people, or 1,000 people, so many influencers are just wanting more followers and they don't even know what to do with them, right? They don't know what to say, how to provide them value. They're just posting. They're just like, I want more followers so that I can have more followers, right? And that is not how I teach things. If you're here to just get the perks of free stuff, you just want to get paid, and you just want to have more followers so that you can say you have a ton of followers, that is not the type of influencer I like to connect with or teach, because most of the people that I think are drawn to me or that I attract are people who are impact driven and who really care about making an impact. Yes, influence is great. Yes, income is a must, because it's hard to, impact people if you are broke and are thinking about money. At the same time, there's also intention, right? Your intention is to help people. So if you are already set on, stage 1 and 2, which again is a ever evolving, ever continuing process, then maybe you're in stage 3 where you're focused on growing. You are consistently already posting content every single day. You are talking to your audience on a daily basis. You are showing up for them, and your only thing now is to reach more people. And so a lot of people come to me and they think they're in stage 3, but they're still actually in stage 1 and 2, and they have to go back. And there's no shame in going back. That's actually a good thing to kind of figure out who you are as a brand and who you are as an influencer so that you can help more people. Because let me tell you, stage 3 is the only thing you need is stage 1 and 2 to succeed in stage 3. So now in stage 4, this is where you're going to build your portfolio. So if you want to start working with brands, and you're already growing your following, you know who you are, you know who your audience is, then it's time to start building your portfolio and getting brand collaborations. If you're doing stage 1, 2, and 3 right, then you're already starting to get brands reaching out to you directly. If you're not, then it's up to you to start attracting these brands. And this is what I teach my students what to do inside my membership, the Spark Society VIP. And I teach them how to build a connection with a brand before even pitching them. And that way they can start adding collabs and brands into their influencer portfolio. And I talk about this in a lot of my other episodes and videos. And I talk about the influencer portfolio, what it is. It's your media kit, rate card, and case studies. And I teach people how to do that inside of my membership. Now, stage 5, this is where you're monetizing your influence. Now, a lot of people want to skip over to stage 5 and are like, I want to make money right away, but they haven't taken the time to go through stage 1 through 4. And I'm going to tell you that it's really hard to do that. For example, it's really hard to go to college, right? If you haven't gone through elementary school first. Like, there are steps to take, and there's a reason why things are like that. Now, there are super smart accelerated kids that skip, high school, and I get it. But in this case, you know what I mean. It's like, it's hard to understand calculus if you don't know basic arithmetic, right? I always do math analogies because I am a math geek and a math nerd. I love math. I love numbers. Shout out to my math geeks out there. So hopefully you understand that. Like, there are concepts that you need to kind of learn and to master before you get into calculus, right? And before you start monetizing. And really, you should be building that community first, because there is nothing to monetize if you don't have that community. There is nothing to monetize if you don't know who you are as a brand, right? Brands want to work with strong brands who know who they are and stand for something. And if you don't even know your mission statement or your brand identity, then it's going to be really hard for them to want to work with you. So now that let's say you are in stage 5, it's time to start monetizing, right? This should be your focus if you're consistently working on the other 4 stages. A lot of influencers start monetizing through brand sponsorships first. So at this stage, influencers can start pitching to brands directly for collaborations and partnerships. And there's also other ways to monetize. This includes affiliate marketing, where you're making a commission out of the products and services that you promote. Also selling your own products and services. So selling physical products or selling digital products, if you have some sort of service that you do, and then you can also run events or host events. Those are the different ways that most influencers monetize. So if you're already in stage 5, one thing I teach influencers to do is to launch a digital offer in 90 days. I love teaching influencers how to do this because I've learned that brand sponsorships are great, but they are not sustainable. You'll see when you start working with brands that sometimes you have, tons of brand deals, sometimes you have 0 brand deals. And also, one thing that really broke my heart was I was realizing that there was so many people that needed my help, my audience, and I wasn't giving them the opportunity to work with me. And so a lot of you already have an audience, whether that's 100 or 1,000, that you may not be getting brand deals yet, but you can launch a digital offer and help them with the skills and the knowledge that you already have. So if you've been thinking of launching a digital offer like a course, a membership, or a program, so I have a membership, I've launched courses before. Some of you are fitness influencers and you want to launch a program. Some of you have a really cool community membership idea where you want to create a community for people like you, but you just maybe don't know how. So I have an opportunity for you to schedule a free breakthrough call with me or my team to see if we can help you launch that digital offer in 90 days. And so I've had students come into this program and they're getting ready to launch soon, and I'm so excited for them. But again, this is only for you if you're already in stage 5. If you are stage 1 and you don't even know who your audience is, or you're still trying to figure out your strategy, this is not for you. This is only for people who are in stage 5 and have already kind of tried to figure that out. Now we go through, we help you figure out what that offer is and how to market that offer so that you can launch that over and over again. And so this is only for people who have gone through stage 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I'll put a link in the comments on how you can schedule that call. And this is not for beginners at all who are just starting out and just want to get brand deals. Some of you watching this are like, okay, I'm only in stage 1, but I still want your help. And that's what my membership community is for, the Spark Society VIP. So I'll give you a link to that as well. And I'll put links to both in the comments or the show notes if you're listening to the podcast. So those are the 5 stages. And a lot of people are like, oh, I'm just starting out, but I want to start thinking about stage 5. So that's where we lose focus. Okay, guys? So I want you to think about which stage are you on and what you need to focus on. So if you're in the beginning, focus on your audience, focus on your brand, and focus on your content. The second one, you got to focus on your strategy, right? Because all of these have to happen before you even monetize. Everyone wants the finish line. Everyone wants the shortcut. I have some students that are like, okay, well, how do I pitch to brands now? And I'm like, well, who are you as a brand? And they can't even answer that question. So that's kind of what I take. That's the journey and the success path that my students go through. And so if you want to start getting on that path, then start getting on it. I'll put the links for you to see, you can see what's right for you. And lastly, I want to give you my top tips on how to stay focused when you get distracted, because we all get distracted. There's so many distractions, right? There's Netflix, there's Hulu, there's social media black hole, there's dating apps, and FOMO. You're like, oh, I'd rather be out and about instead of working on my brand, even though I know I want to quit my job and be my own boss. So you really have to have a reason, right? And this is why I only work with impact-driven influencers, is because if you just want the fame and and the fortune and the perks, that's actually not going to come right away. It's going to take time to build up to that. And most people give up and quit before that because they don't have a compelling reason to keep going. And if you're watching this right now, if you're listening to this right now, you probably have a burning desire to help people. And I totally get it, because I am like you. That's probably why we're attracted. I've attracted you to this episode, is because, I believe everything happens for a reason. You're listening to this for a reason, because you want to find a way to help people, but you don't exactly know how. And you can help people just by being you, by sharing your story, by building a personal brand where you give people a space to feel inspired and relatable, and they feel like they're not alone. Really, that's all. Like, people want community, people want connection, right? And so I want you to really figure out why you want to do this, because it's going to take, it's not easy. It's possible. Definitely possible. You see so many influencers doing this right now. You see so many influencers succeeding and working with brands, but it's not easy. They had to work to get there. They had to, have some sort of sacrifice and put the work in. But this is really my top tips for you to stay focused. So number one, make sure you know why you're doing this, and really reconnect with the reason why you're doing this and who you want to help, because that's really going to help you decide to work on your brand and your business instead of going to do other things, right? Number two, use time blocking. That's something that's helped me tremendously over the last 5 years, because when I had a day job, I had only the mornings and the evenings and the weekends. And so I had to make sure I, allotted enough time to my business to get it to the place where I could grow it into a 6-figure business, so I can, pay myself and live and quit my job. And so if that is your goal, then you got to put the time in, right? It's not going to happen accidentally. Also, I like, another tip is to limit your social media to just 30 minutes at a time. I totally been in that point where I'm scrolling through Instagram and I'm posting or I'm responding to comments, and then it's 3 hours later because I followed some sort of black hole where someone was tagged in something and I followed that tag, and then the tag, and then that tag. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Where, you're in that social media I think they called it rabbit hole. I just called it black hole. Anyway, by limiting it to 30 minutes at a time, set a timer, do whatever you have to do so that you do not spend too much time on there. Like, social media is a big part of our lives, but it shouldn't eat up all our time. And also planning ahead, like I talked about, is knowing your priorities, doing a brain dump, doing a planning session. I'm getting set to do 2020 planning session with a bunch of my students next week, so that they know exactly what their plans are as far as like a year overview, and then we're going to break that up into quarter, months, and then they can do it to weeks and days on their own. But really having a high level overview on what next year is going to look like is really going to help. Only doing one thing at a time. I talked about this before. Multitasking is not the smart way to do things. It's actually not the smart way to do things. It is the opposite. And so I want you to start focusing on one thing at a time only. And lastly, give yourself some slack. I know you want to get everything done. But there are only so many hours in a day, and you only have so much energy. Remember that what I said about the bucket of water? You only have, that's it. And so I want you to make sure that, one, you're not setting yourself up for failure and giving yourself 10 things to do when you should only have, 3 things to do. I like to do maybe 1 to 2 things, and then because I'm an overachiever, I like to put 3 things or 4 things. But really, some people are like, just 1 thing a day, that's an accomplishment, right? So thank you so much for listening to the Spark Show, and I will see you in the next episode. So that was just my outro for the podcast, you guys. I'm here for you. If you have any questions, I'd love to know in the comments if that helped you out. If focus is something that you've been struggling with, what do you guys think about, the stages that you're in? I know a lot of people said, Anne Marie and Kimberly are both in stage 1. Brittany says, I think I'm in stage 2. So let me know in the comments what stage you're in. And if you're having trouble focusing, let me know in the comments. I'm going to take some coffee over here. Okay, I don't see any more questions. So I just wanted to talk about this because I think focus is something that a lot of us struggle with because there's so much going on. We have so many distractions in front of us. Trust me, I have to do all these things like, close down all my windows and I put my phone downwards because if I get all those notifications, then I'm always like checking my phone and I become this paranoid person, right? Where I'm like, then I talk to you about context switching, then you're always like context switching. You're like doing one thing and then you're doing something else and then you end up doing nothing and completing nothing. And so I feel like, as influencers, we have a lot on our plate. We already do a lot on top of the things that we're already doing. And so I totally get it. And so hopefully this video and this free training helped you find your focus. And so we have Vanessa, stage 1. Charisse says context switching is very interesting, right? Charisse, like, I didn't even think about this until I started getting into productivity and learning from people who talk about being the most productive. So I totally get it. Ruth is in stage 1. Charisse is stage 1. Amazing. So now that you guys know what stage you are on, you should know that should be your only focus, right? Your only focus at this point is getting to know your audience, getting to know your brand and positioning yourself and creating that foundation so that when you are starting to reach out to brands, when you do start to monetize, that you're ready because you're very clear on your foundation. And so thank you so much again for joining me today. If you're watching the replay, put replay in the replay in the comments, and I want to see who is watching these. We have a question. Brittany, when it comes to the stages, how do you confidently move forward to the next stage? Sometimes I feel like I go back and start over because I am comfortable going back. So great question, Brittany. I think that you have to put a metric on it. So this, a lot of some people make the excuse that they're in stage 1 because it's not 100% perfect. So some people say 80% is good enough. Some people say 70% is good enough. Nobody can judge when it's the right time. I can't tell you when it's the right time. I think it's more of an intuitive hit. I'm very, when I talk to my students, I'm all about using your intuition. So I think that if you are 70% confident in the fact that you know who your audience is, you know who your brand is, and you know who you are, then you move on to stage 2. And again, that doesn't mean next month you can't review it and realize, oh, it turns out my audience are mostly this age, even though I thought they were this age, and then you flex it. You never ever stop stage 1. It's just running in the background while you're working on the other stages. And so your security and your confidence is based on you. It's relative to you, and nobody can ever, tell you you should be confident now, Brittany, like it's time to move to stage 4. You'll feel it. And I think that, sometimes we do things before we're ready, and that's totally fine. Like I feel like I usually move pretty quickly. Sometimes like a brand will reach out to you and you're only in stage 2 and you're going to have to do some of stage 4 and 5 already. And that's totally fine. Like life is not perfect. Things happen when they come and you kind of have to seize the opportunity. But, in a perfect world, that's how I would want to teach my students. But I know that things, Okay, comfortable and the unready. Yeah, so you might not be fully ready, and that's okay. We're never gonna be fully ready for anything. Like they talk about that when people say like, it's not a good time right now to do this, like major life thing, like buy a house or whatever, move, get a job, have a kid, whatever. But like what people say and what I've seen is like people say like, when are you ever ready? When are you ever gonna say, oh, I'm 100% confident to do a TED talk right now? Like even the world's biggest speakers are probably not 100% confident. If they are, it took them 10 years to get there, right? But if you had the opportunity tomorrow to get on stage to help people and to inspire people, even though you didn't do a talk yet, you might not be ready, but you might seize the opportunity, right? And I would want you to seize the opportunity, even if it's not perfect, because you have the opportunity to impact. And so, Brittany, I trust you and I trust your intuition. So I know you'll know the answer. A lot of my students, they ask me questions and I don't know the answer. I can always tell them what I've experienced, but really all the answers you're looking for is in you. I'm guilty of this too. I'm always looking for a teacher or for someone to tell me a strategy that would work, but really everything you need is inside you. You just need to unlock it. And I'm a big believer in coaching and mentoring. I'm a coach, I'm a teacher, I'm a mentor. And my job is not to tell you the answer. My job is to help you trust yourself because you do know the answer. And even if you don't know the answer right now, my job is to remind you that you have the ability to get those answers. And so hopefully that helps you guys out today. Thank you so much for joining me live. I love it when you guys are live and commenting. If you have any more questions about focus and the stages or anything like that, please put it in the comments and I will go ahead and check back on that later on. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you later. Bye.